Welcome to the IDP Hunting Grounds. I'm your host, Steve Hungarter. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is at IDP Hunters. Tonight, we're gonna go over some of our favorite sleepers that you could find in IDP redrafts or on your waiver wire. I'm joined tonight by Steve Scholes. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing good. What's up, Steve?
Hey, not much, man. I'm so glad to have you on the show. For those that don't know, Steve is a writer of an IDP Plus. He's also a collegiate scout. He's also a big fisherman. And last but not least, he likes cheese. He's a cheesehead. Okay? He loves his Green Bay Packers, don't he?
Yep. Yeah. Third Hall of Fame quarterback in a row. So
you can't
deal with it.
You just guys got good luck, I guess. Yeah, Jordan Love surprised me this year. Top 10 passer. I mean, what have you? Yeah, you're on your way, right? Where are you from originally, Steve?
I'm originally from Chicago.
Are you putting me on right now?
No, it's true. I was born and raised in Chicago. I've never lived in Wisconsin, but my grandfather was a Packers fan. Dad was a Packers fan, so I kind of inherited it from them.
I never met a guy from Chicago that's a Green Bay fan. Isn't that like sacrilegious? Like those two things don't go together.
A little bit, and I also married a Vikings fan, so.
Oh. Oh my goodness. For people that don't know, my audience at home, people on Spotify, Steve wrote this very impressive article on IDP Plus, and I just wanted to kind of share the light on that. And if you guys don't know, the subscription over there, I think they're running a promo right now, right? It's like $9.99 a month. You can get all of his writing. I write over there as well. But yeah, you wrote this article, and I'll let you explain it. But it's kind of interesting because when I looked at it, I seen your profile picture and I seen you're a big fisherman. So I'm like, I got to ask Steve about this. I didn't know you were from Chicago originally.
Yeah, no. Everything about me is basically a paradox. But yeah, big fisherman, and it helps. It allows me to leave the city and go up to Wisconsin and be with my people.
Hey, that's fun. We all gotta have our own people. Yeah. So here's the for those that are seeing me on YouTube. Here's the article Steve wrote, and again, very expansive article. And basically, it's how to transition your dynasty league to IDP. I didn't do that. I have a 17-year-old league. I had to kind of transition that years ago. But what are some of the good talking points you can tell us from your article?
Yeah, I think I can really boil it down to, if you're going to transition your league to IDP, you have to figure out how many of them you want in your starting lineup. So do you want defensive players to be as valuable as offense, or do you want them to have an impact but still be kind of dominant towards offense? So you have to figure out how many players you're going to start. 3, 5, maybe full IDP, do 11. And then after that, you just have to figure out the scoring system. So is it going to be based on primarily tackles, or is it going to be big play heavy? So interceptions or sacks. And then the last thing is just figuring out how you're going to actually disperse these players. And so you have to figure out auction or draft. You could do linear, snake. It's really up to you. But those were kind of the three main things that I hit on in terms of implementing IDP into a league.
That's awesome, guys. Check out his article. And like I said, he also writes rookie articles. He writes great content. And thanks again for coming on the show, Steve. I appreciate you for doing this. I mentioned I have a 17-year-old home league, and we had to kind of transition years ago. What are some of the funner leagues that you play in, or some of the more expansive leagues?
So I actually run a 64-team full IDP league. We have 53-man rosters. It's actually
sir.
It's college football themed. So we've got all 4 major conferences. We did have the Pac-12, and that kind of disbanded this year. So, but we have teams that play for bowl games, the college football playoffs. So it's got a lot of interest. We're going into our third year with that. Haven't had to really recruit too hard for it. A lot of people have been, referring their friends, but that's one of them. And I'm in a few salary cap leagues, so 32 team salary cap and contract leagues, and basically, treat it like being an NFL GM.
Yeah, I have a couple 32s, but never a 64. So you probably got some great deep dives for this podcast. I'm excited, but I got one more question for you, Steve. I go down, I look at your profile picture, big hunting fishing guy right there. Those are some big old fish. Maybe that's because you're from the Midwest. I got to ask you. Every time I put a fishing rod, every time I put that, I put the thing out there, cast it, and I stick it in the water, I don't catch anything. What's wrong with me? Is it my breath stink? Why don't fish like me? What are your secrets? How do I catch some big fish like that?
Honestly, I think the secret is just patience. I don't expect to catch a bunch of fish, and I'm out there just having fun. And when I do catch a fish, it's, it hooks me and I go right back to throwing my line in the water. So it's all about persistence. Maybe
it's me because I have no patience in drafts either. I'm like, look, do you, crap or get off the pot? Do you want this trade or not? I'm moving on. I think quick. Yeah, I probably don't have the patience to go through it. But there's no secret bait. There's no secret cast. There's no way. What kind of fish are those anyway? Those look interesting.
Those are walleye. They were biting really good in the fall on the Mississippi River.
That's where you go to Mississippi and do that?
Yep.
Yeah, and how often do you fish?
If I'm lucky, a few times each season. A little bit busier these days, but yeah, I try to go whenever I can get out of the house.
Gotcha. All right, I guess people don't want to hear about our fishing stories. Let's give them some real fantasy football fishing stories. I have some kind of cockamamie names on here. I got some conspiracy theories to throw at you. What says you? You want to start with some defensive linemen? Some of these guys are going to hit. Some of these guys are going to miss. But that's the beauty of a sleeper in the offseason. You just don't know. It's all speculative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'll start first. One of the guys that I'm really high on is Shawn Robinson. So he's a nose tackle. And normally I would stay away from nose tackle players. I mean, guys who are going to take up blocks aren't going to produce as many tackles. And so we tend to, try to drift towards like 3 technique players, guys that are going to rush the passer. But the key to this is that he's gotten a bunch of tackles. He's gotten 60 tackles in multiple seasons. And he's going to be playing next to Derek Brown now, who is an absolute stud. So having a team have to scheme and deal with Derek Brown is going to free up Shawn Robinson to hopefully get some more production there. I mean, I think this isn't a player that's going to cost, like, you could probably get him as a throw-in in basically any league in a trade. So he's not going to cost you anything. I think he can really do some damage this year. He also signed, so it was a 3-year contract with Carolina. So it's not just, 1 year and dump. He'll be there for a couple of years at least.
And that's a good point, a good segue, because my sleeper is also on Carolina. They just recently signed a guy named DJ Wonnum. Okay, it's a 2-year, $12 million deal. He's going to be a starter on, DL linebacker eligibility. He's going to pretty much have that Brian Burns role. And you know what's interesting about both of our players? Here's a stat for you. I don't know if you noticed, Steve. Brian Burns left free agency. Yetur Gross-Matos left. Frankie Louvu left. All 3 of those guys combined for 70.5% of the total sacks of that team. So there's a lot of production there between our names, our couple guys here and there. There's a lot of production to be had on that team. So I'm kind of excited about both those names you just mentioned. Defensive linemen, do you have another name here?
Yeah. So if we kick over to pass rushers, I really like Leonard Floyd, who signed with San Francisco. I believe it was just a 1-year deal, but this is probably, so last year he was with Buffalo, right? And he had, I think, 9.5 sacks, or it was 10.5 sacks. But he's averaged basically 9 or 10 sacks a season the last 4 years. Basically, ever since he got out of Chicago, he's been a productive pass rusher. And going to San Francisco, he's going to get paired up with Nick Bosa, who is by far the best, teammate he's ever played with in terms of the edge rusher partner. And there's nobody there. I mean, Yetur Gross-Matos went from Carolina to San Francisco. He's not going to be competition for Leonard Floyd. And then the other player that is there, I forget, but basically there's no competition. He saw 53% of snaps last year in that rotation with Buffalo. I could see him pushing towards like 60 or 70. And I think this could be a career year for him.
He got, on that note, Leonard Floyd, he had 10.5 sacks last year, but also his pass rush rate was 9.3%. I don't know how you do it, but like when I look at PFF and I'm looking, anything over 8 is outstanding to me. So those guys are just super freak athletes. He's going to get his own. You're right. To have anything on the other side of Bosa is appreciative. So yeah, these are some good, strong names here. Let me throw one more back at you in the spirit of the pass rush, in the spirit of PFF. And we know this name, but maybe casual fans don't. And I've joined a couple orphan teams this season, and he's on waivers. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Deep enough leagues? Bryce Huff should be owned, guys. Bryce Huff just signed with the Eagles, so there's opportunity and space there. We know the story on Huff when he was with the Jets. He wasn't getting a lot of starting time, but when he was popping. He broke every PFF category. He had a grade of 83.5, which ranks 10th amongst all the edge rushers. And then he ended up having a 10-sack season, in spite of having to compete with, Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald's, the everybody else on that darn line was getting snaps. Where's he getting in there, So give me Bryce Huff with the Eagles because they desperately need some people to stop the run and get the pass. So that was my only other DL. Do you have anybody else that you're thinking about?
Well, I really like Bryce Huff there because, like you said, I mean, he got paid, I think it was $51 million over 3 years, and Hassan Reddick's getting traded. We don't know when, but they basically come to a standstill there. So it's him and Josh Sweat and nobody else. So I think it's going to be
$51.1 million, $34 million guaranteed. That's a good point, Steve.
Yep. Yeah, lots of security. They're going to have to give him some play time and give him a long leash there to, hopefully get a lot of sacks.
Mm-hmm. I don't have any DLs unless you do. You want to move on to linebacker?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. My first linebacker, and I've been kind of like riding this. I've been tooting this horn for a while now. So if guys see me on the podcast, I've been kind of riding the EJ Speed train for a while. For some reason, this dude's not owned in a lot of places. Well, let me just paint the story. I love telling this story, Steve. He became a starter when Shaq Leonard got hurt last year, okay? That was in week 12. So he played week 12 and 13. There was a bye week 14. Then he came in and finished 15, 16, 17, 18. So in those 6 games, he had 128 points, okay? What does that mean? 128 divided by 6, 21.3 points on the season. That gives him LB2 numbers, LB2 average. If it was a full body of work, LB2, that would have been for the season, okay? By contrast, what's his name? Olakun, he had 21.8. So he was right there with the top elite guys. Just to give a little bit of what all this stuff means, why am I saying LB2 and 21.3 points? Zaire Franklin, which everybody loves, right? He's kind of just a tackle, doesn't really give you all the rest of the stuff, the special stuff. But during that time when speed was overproducing, Zaire Franklin had 79 points, 6 games, same span, 13.2 average. That was LB 60 on the year. So if it stays like this, and that's kind of what I'm anticipating, while everybody else is taking the high draft pick, I'm taking the low draft pick, the waiver guy. Speed is a more athletic player. Now, granted, I really believe, just looking at the roster, I really think they're going to pick up a rookie, in this draft. I really think they're going to. But if it stays the way it is, I'd rather take the cheaper player than over Franklin because you'd have to pay up to get Franklin. What says you, Steve?
Yeah, I think a player that I really like is Blake Cashman for the Vikings. He signed a 3-year, $25 million contract. Comes from Houston. He was in that absolutely loaded and crowded linebacker room there. You had Christian Harris. You had Perryman, just like 4 or 5 guys. And when he played, he was very productive. And obviously Minnesota saw that and they just let Jordan Hicks go. Eric Kendricks was released last year. There's really nobody there. I think Anthony Barr resigned, but basically he's going to get, probably green dot status. He's going to get close to 100% of the snaps. And I mean, that's money in IDP. So yeah, Cashman's somebody that if I can get him, people don't realize the role he's stepping into, I'm jumping on it.
Great talking point, Steve. And I don't know if you know like Cashman as a player, but I remember watching him with the Jets. Okay. He just kept getting hurt, but he was like a waiver wire replacement for me. He had good numbers, even way back then. Depending on who you talk to in different podcasts, say different stuff. Oh, he sucks. Oh, he's great. He sucks. He's great. He's a good player. He just had a bad rap, and it's all about an IDP opportunity and snaps. Will he get the opportunity and snaps? I'm not sure how that's going to pan out. Do you? Because I know Brian Flores, he likes that 1 or 2 linebacker spot. I'm trying to figure out how that all pans out, which leads me to my sleeper is Ivan Pace Jr. Everybody remembers, right? He was a PFF darling. He finished as a top 10 rookie linebacker. And how he did it was his PFF metrics were through the roof. Ivan Pace had a 77.2 pass rush grade. He had a 78 coverage grade. Overall, that was 77.7. That's where I get the top 10 rookie ranking, right? He did all this on a short, limited role because Hicks was in his way, right? Yep. What's interesting, where a lot of fantasy owners check out halfway at the end of the season, Hicks actually got hurt and went to IR. When Hicks got hurt, Pace came right in and started just putting up beautiful, magnificent numbers, right? But then Hicks comes off IR at the end of the year where most owners are done playing whatever. Most owners assumed that it was going to be Hicks's job. Well, it actually wasn't. I actually started playing the 2 linebacker sets. So my thought was even with Hicks, if he signed or didn't sign, whatever, that Pace would have a role. And then, of course, we know what just happened, in the last week. Hicks signed with the Browns. So now Hicks is gone. So I think there will be a role for a Cashman Pace situation in his Brian Flores scheme. I really do. So those are 2 sleepers that a lot of people aren't talking about.
Yeah, I think that's the hope, right, is that they use the 2 linebackers and they'll both – I mean, there's plenty of tackles for 2 linebackers in a defense. I mean, they should both benefit.
And so you got anybody else at linebacker you're thinking about?
Well, actually, I really like Denzel Perryman. He just went to he signed with the Chargers, went back.
That's where it all began for him, though.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, Kenneth Murray left and he went to the Titans. So it was kind of like musical chairs. Everybody's jumping from one team to the other. And it slots in perfectly for Perryman. I mean, this guy is just a productive player in IDP. I mean, I think he's not a sexy name, and he's older now. He's in his early 30s, and I think you could probably get him for a good value.
Steve, can you see my notes? Are you looking at my notes? Me and you are vibing right now. It's like we're reading. It's like we're playing Go Fish. You didn't teach me much how to fish. Not a good fisherman, but I can fish some IDP. Okay. I had the other linebacker for the Chargers, believe it or not. Because I'm looking at that room and it's open right now, I had Daiyan Henley as my next sleeper. So funny. We have the same teams. We're looking at the same players. For Henley, for the argument for Henley, we already know Kendricks is gone with the Cowboys. Murray's gone, right? So there's airspace and opportunity for whoever steps in. And Perryman seems like the natural starter. But let me tell you about Henley, okay? Henley was like a depending on your draft order when they came out as rookies 2 years ago, most people had Campbell. Most people had Drew Simpson. And then they had either Henley or they had Simpson, either or. He was either 3rd or 4th in that draft class. That's how people had it. Henley was actually, kind of being groomed to play more. But then last year, when I tell people about Henley, they're like, well, he didn't play much last year. And I argue, yeah, he did. You just weren't looking. In the preseason, he had himself games in the preseason. If you go back and look at those numbers, Look at what he did in the preseason, and he wore the green dot. So this may be a Henley opportunity with Perryman as the crafty veteran to go step in. Somebody's got to make plays on that team. And they're over the cap, if I'm not mistaken, or they were. They got financial issues. So very likely those two linebackers will start and play.
Yeah, unless they pick up a rookie in the draft. I mean, they don't have any money to sign anybody else. They're even getting rid of Mike Williams and freeing a little bit of cap. They're still really, really tight. So, yeah, I feel good about both of our players getting a chance to start and have a lot of opportunity.
For safeties, I kind of just throw dart throws out there because, I mean, who knows? Who knows for sure what these guys are going to pan out to be? But I'll just throw a couple names at you. You tell me if you like them or not. The deep leagues, the 32-team league I'm pretty proud of this. On the Falcons last year, what's his name, Grant, he got benched for just poor play. They brought in this kid, he was a rookie, Hellams. I think I'm saying it right, Hellams. He was a starter, and he was actually a quality rookie. The problem with Hellams, hopefully I'm saying it right, when he was in college, remember when Jalen Hyatt was getting all the press last year as a wide receiver? He had a 5-touchdown game. It was all on him, unfortunately. It was all on this guy. But he ends up coming to the NFL, and he ends up giving himself a quality starting role. I looked at the depth chart, which is always great this time of year. I don't know what you use. I use our lads. He's still penciled as a starter. So that might be a free safety, like last pick of drafts if you're in a deep enough league. But Hellams is my guy there.
Yeah, no, that's a good name. I've got a player that actually got benched too. If we're talking about bench safeties, I'm a fan of Jeremy Chinn. I mean, he was drafted by the Panthers 4 years ago. Was a second-round pick. Comes out of Southern Illinois, so small school guy. And for IDP, he was a top safety. I mean, he was an IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring. I think he was like 270 points. It was ridiculous. He came in, and then like progressively over the past 3 years, he's just lost playing time, and he got benched. He barely saw the field last year, and so I'm happy that he's going to a new team. He needs a fresh start. He's going to play for Dan Campbell. And the thing about Dan Campbell is he really likes to use those hybrid safety linebackers. I mean, you know, Kurz, Bell last year. And I think that's a role that Jeremy Chinn could really, really excel in. So I think even though it's a 1-year contract, I think he can find a lot of playing time in Washington. They had some really nice pieces. If you saw, they brought in Bobby Wagner. They brought in Frankie Louvu and Dorrance Armstrong. So I think Washington's defense is actually really going to surprise people next year. And Jeremy Chinn could have a major role in that.
Especially if he gets back to that hybrid role. I don't know if you're any drafts right now, but, you know, I love the draft this time of year because it's like the only time where the trading is kind of on an even playing field. There's no calculators. It's kind of like just true. So I do a lot of drafting. Jeremy Chinn is getting picked up in a lot of best ball places. I'm glad you said it because I didn't have a lot of analysis to say, except for he's got a new team. But I'm glad you put it out there. There's a couple that aren't sleepers that I'm tracking. Just the ADP is just so ridiculously low, especially on sleeper. Reed Blankenship is like nowhere to be found. And then Shaq Thompson's nowhere to be found. Like if you're playing best balls right now, you can just scoop those guys up for nothing. Like I don't know how sleeper does it, but exploit, like you said earlier, exploit your scoring and exploit your team lack of knowledge, exploit the matchups, you know?
Yeah, Blankenship was the starting safety for the Eagles, and I don't think they've done anything. And then Kevin Byard left. I don't think they've brought anybody in. So his role seems pretty secured right now anyway.
Sidney Brown, you would think the door is knocking. I mean, that was a pretty good player, but he got hurt. So you know, depending how deep your leagues are. But that's really all I have at safety because, you know, those guys are just interchangeable. What was his name? Whitehead, historically, he was never really a coverage guy, but last year he actually put the interceptions up. Whitehead went down to the Buccaneers. There's room there. while Winfield's doing all the big plays. But I don't really have any other defensive backs. Do you, Steve?
Taron Johnson for the Bills. He just got a massive contract.
That's a good one.
So he's the highest paid slot player. So, I mean, if you play IDP, you know that Taron Johnson's a pretty reliable corner, as reliable as corners can get. So at least the contract adds a little bit of, he's going to be here for a while and keep that role.
You know what's funny? I was digging through your article and we were talking about transition leagues. Knowing your scoring matters. I actually joined a league, and I probably shouldn't say it on here because they're probably going to listen to me. I joined a league. They gave like 0.5 tackles and 9 points a sack. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm putting all these linebackers. I'm just going to put in sack-heavy guys here. It sounds like you play in a lot of big three scorings, right?
Yeah, I play in a mix of leagues, but I prefer the tackle heavy ones. Just because I love to give credit to linebackers. I feel like at times it's a big play score and they kind of get forgotten.
They're easier to gauge, the tackles and the snaps. But to your point, like a Cameron Kroll would be a top 12 guy, but in big three, he'd be like top 30 or something, But if you're in a big three and you're trying to exploit ADP, like you were saying, and scoring, there's, guys like Deron Bland were like top plays. They're nothing in our tackle ones, but they're top plays over there. And then another guy that no one's really biting on in these best balls I'm playing is Jason Pinnock. I'm like, he had a great year, big three scoring wise, but you just got to know what leagues you're in. And that's why I kind of like your article. And I just wanted to share that with the audience one more time. If you're transitioning your leagues and you have questions, you reach out to Big Steve FF, right? You reach out to Steve and you ask him questions because, like I said, he does this often. And Steve, this kind of concludes this episode. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything that you want to talk about?
I'm just really excited for the draft. I mean, free agency, that was just straight into the veins for a week there, right?
I needed like 2 weeks just to process it. I was like, whoa, there's all this going on. I had AJ Veal. You haven't met him yet. He does like a Wounded Warrior league that I play. It's pretty fun. But he came on here and all of his analysts, he's like, yeah, everybody can't go to the Raiders, AJ. Everybody can't go to the Raiders. I mean, it sounds good. It briefs well, but, we got to go a little deeper. And, but yeah, the free agency was impressive. I can't wait to go into the draft. And that's what we're going to do next. The next episode of our part 2, we're going to actually talk about rookies, not just rookies, but we're going to go a little deeper than other shows do. Hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Like I said, check Steve out at Big Steve FF on Twitter, and then also check him out at IDP Plus. We're going to call it. Y'all have a good night.